4 games in, there's a lot to like about this Illini men's basketball team, but there's also a concern or two as well.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Locked On Illini. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network around. My name is Sonny Verma, your host here at Locked On, where I continue to provide you coverage each and every day. Everything you see, everything you hear is going to be absolutely free. Only thing I ask for in return is, if you don't mind, make sure you hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel, as it is my goal to hit that magical 4,000 mark on YouTube. Can you believe that? 4,000 subscribers. I think we can do it. Today, I want to kind of take a step back. Illinois football and Illinois basketball were both victorious this past weekend, but both also have some very tough matchups upcoming this week. Illinois men's basketball, which, by the way, the AP rankings just came out, and they're going to be ranked number 8 in their matchup Wednesday at the United Center against Alabama, a game that I'm going to be at. I think there's going to be an alumni meeting at Rinaldi's before the game. I will be there. Please, if you see me, if you're showing up, come say hello. I'd love to meet this community. But, you know, it's a game that I'm very excited for because I'm, as a whole, very excited about this basketball team. Not only are they 4-0, but they, in my opinion, look very impressive in that 4-0. And so I want to kind of talk about the things that I understand the season's young, but still there's things that are jumping out to me that I certainly like about this basketball team, and, you know, one or two that I don't like. And I want to hear your thoughts as well. Let me know in the comment section whether you agree with my takes or you don't, and how your opinions differ. Let me know what you like and dislike. First and foremost, and I know this is a cop-out, but when it comes to this Illinois basketball team, I just love this roster that Brad Underwood has put together. We've been talking about the ceilings of previous Illini teams, right? You know, we've had teams that have been the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. We've had teams that won the Big Ten Conference. We've had teams that have won Big Ten tournament titles. But when you look from 1 to 9, I don't know if we've ever had a team this deep and talented. In years past, you could always count on 1 or 2 guys to be your best players on any given night. But when I take a look at this roster, are you telling me there's not going to be nights where David Mirkovic is your best player, and then there's going to be other nights where Keaton Wagler is going to be your best player, and then we've already seen nights where Andrej Stojakovic is your best player. We've seen nights where Kylan Boswell is your best player. Guys, I haven't even mentioned arguably our best player, Tomislav Ivicic, who, as of this recording, Brad Underwood did say it was going to be a game time decision on Wednesday. So he may be able to suit up, and that would be huge because the whispers you had heard was anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. I know other content creators, I think Jeremy Warner said he had heard 3 to 6 weeks. You know, if he's able to be a game time decision Wednesday, you're hoping that that timeline can be sped up a little bit. So that would be fantastic news, having Tommy on the floor against Alabama, or just in general, you want him on the floor just so to see what this team looks like. But when you just talk about the overall roster construction, Brad Underwood remade half this roster, and it really looks like he's hit a double, a triple, and maybe even home runs with all the guys that he brought in. Keaton Wagler is a guy who obviously had all the hype in the world this past summer, and I wanted to caution that hype. I got frustrated when I thought that Brad Underwood was putting forth expectations on Keaton that were unfair to Keaton, because there's no way he would be able to live up to it. How stupid do you think I look right now? Keaton Wagler's not just living up to those expectations. I would argue he has exceeded them. Keaton for the season is averaging 17.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 2 assists a game. And he makes contact. Almost every single game, he shoots more free throws than anybody else on this basketball team. Keaton Wagler would be the best player on a lot of college basketball teams in this country. He may be the 4th best basketball player on this team. Maybe 2nd. Maybe 3rd. That's just how deep this roster is. Kylan Boswell really does seem to be coming into his own. Sure, he struggled a little bit in the last game, but you saw how important he was, along with Andrei Stojakovic, against a team like Texas Tech. And you know what? I'm counting on a big bounce back game for Kylan against Alabama. I would not be surprised if he ultimately ends up being the player of that game and the most important Illini in that game. He understands what his role is. On some nights he might be the best player on the court, but night in and night out, he needs to be the leader on that basketball court, especially now with Tomislav Ivicic not playing. Kylan Boswell is the only captain on the court right now. And so with this roster as talented as it is, you've got your good blend of youth with veterans mixed in. Kylan needs to be that one, that force that just guides the team to do what they kind of need to do. And he's been doing it. Then you have a guy like Andrei Stojakovic, who I'll also get to in a little bit later. A guy who doesn't play necessarily like the rest of the team, but he gives you a skill set that the other players don't provide. And I think that's important because that's why I've been such a fan of Mihailo Petrovic, who, by the way, has not played yet. And I'm already telling you I like this roster. My everydayers in here know all off season long, I've been talking about, for a while, I thought Petrovic would be starting. I think most people saw that. And then the offseason happened, and you heard a lot of talk about Keaton Wagler, and, well, now you see why. Now, it looks like Petrovic might have a sixth man, maybe seventh man type of role on this basketball team, but we haven't seen what he's able to do yet on the court. But what I like about Andrej, what I like about Mihailo is those two guys are able to offer a skill set on the court that the rest of the team doesn't have. Illinois is really good at offense. Okay, we're going to end the season as one of the most efficient teams in all of college basketball. I would be shocked if we weren't in the top 10, probably closer to the top 5. But on days that shots aren't falling, sometimes you just need guys who can attack the rim. And Illinois has 3 of those guys. I think Andrei Stojakovic is clearly one of those guys. We saw him do it just a couple of games ago against Texas Tech. I think Mihailo Petrovic is going to be that type of guy. And quite honestly, we've seen Keaton Wagler also have that ability. Last year, we didn't have a single one that was able to attack the rim the way we have 3 guys doing it this year. You all remember Terrence Shannon Jr. just a couple seasons ago. This was what he was so incredibly good at. This is why he shot seemingly 10, 15 free throws every single game. All right, looks like I'm going a little long. There's still a couple of other things I really like and dislike about this team. Let's get to that right after this. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who'll score next to any fourth quarter comeback. Plus, you can even combine your live plays into a same game parlay for a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, no matter if your team's winning or they're losing. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay, so another thing I really like about this basketball team shocks me. Because coming into this offseason, I think if you polled all Illini fans, whether they're just casual fans or maybe people who cover the team, if you talked about what you thought the perceived weaknesses of this basketball team would be, number 1 would be defense, and number 2 would be rebounding. In particular, I like to focus on rebounding because you lost your starting power forward to Michigan. You lost Kasperi Siakis, who was a top 21 draft pick in the NBA draft this past summer, a guy who, as your point guard, at 6'6", he was one of the best rebounders in the entire country for his size. And you know that last year's team, in a lot of ways, is built on rebounding, and it makes sense. If you follow analytics, I know that's kind of over the head of a lot of people, but if you're into that nerdy type of talk, you know that rebounds has kind of been a statistic that a lot of the forward-thinking programs, both professionally and in college, really focus on. And so it makes sense that Brad Underwood, a guy who obviously deep dives into analytics, or at least his coaching staff does, wanted to build a team that's going to be high up there when it comes to rebounding. Last year, we had that. This year, I was struggling to see where all those rebounds were going to come from, especially after we had lost those two guys. And yet, we sit here after game 4, and when it comes to rebounds, David Mirkovic is at 12.5. But even besides that, you have Kylan Boswell averaging 5.3 rebounds. You have Tommy Avicic averaging 4, and we know that's going to get higher. He only played in a single game. Keaton Wagler's averaging 6.5 rebounds. Andrei Stojakovic averaging 4. Ben Humrickhouse averaging 5. Zvonimir Avicic averaging 6.5. So maybe there isn't one or two guys outside Mirkovic who's getting the load of rebounds, but this has become a balanced effort when it comes to this basketball team. Brad Underwood's message is clear. Go rebound the basketball. If you don't rebound the basketball, you are not going to play. And so this team collectively averaging almost 49 rebounds per game. You can tell this is now ingrained into the culture. David Mirkovic just had 27 and 21 in his stat line in this past game. And one of the reporters afterwards asked him about rebounding. He said, yeah, Brad Underwood yells at him all practice long about rebounding the basketball. And they joked, of course, that David Mirkovic yells back in his language that Brad doesn't understand. Like clearly, rebounding matters. And because rebounding matters, it helps this offense in a lot of ways click. 3-pointers are hard to make, and that certainly hasn't changed. Illinois right now, as of this recording, is averaging 36% from three-point land. So even when the threes don't fall the initial time, if you can get your guys another look, you put yourself in a really good position. This team is rebounding, and I would argue it's the ability of this team to rebound that I'm looking most forward and optimistic about this matchup against Alabama on Wednesday night. We saw Alabama really get worked on the glass against Purdue just last week. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the tape looks like this Wednesday when Illinois takes on Alabama. Now, granted, Nate Oates knows this. He saw how his team was outworked on the glass. So we'll see what kind of adjustments they make. But when you have a baseline, a culture where you know you have to grab those rebounds, like in order to grab rebounds, you need to hustle. That's not a play that you can relax. That you need to learn your angles. You need to know you need to go after that ball. And when that applies to just rebounding, I feel like that spreads everywhere. This is a very hard-working team. This is a very high IQ team. And that's one of the reasons I think we are 4-0. And one of the reasons, if I'm being honest, I've become even more optimistic on what the team's ceiling could be. In the season preview episode, I said that I think this is the second best team in the Big Ten Conference. I might have sold myself short. This very well might be the best team in the conference. Purdue looks great, don't get me wrong. But it's not the runaway great that a lot of people were telling me that the Purdue Boilermakers were going to be. Michigan, for some reason, is still ranked ahead of Illinois in the AP poll that came out on Monday. But I'm looking forward to that matchup between Illinois and Michigan and to get that win streak to double digit. And as for defense, it might be a little bit early to see how, or at least to understand how good of a defensive basketball team this is going to be. But I'll be honest, I like the early glimpses of what I've seen. David Mirkovic may not be great when it comes to lateral movement, but I like his big physical body. He's very imposing, especially for a freshman big in the Big Ten Conference. Zvonimir Avicic provides something that this team hasn't had in a very long time. And maybe I'm just not thinking about it, but it's at least since I remember following this team. And that's just a legitimate shot blocker under the rim. Even if you are not performing your best when it comes to team defense, there's just a relaxing feeling knowing that, you know, if should you make a mistake, there's somebody behind you who can help offset that, who can help wipe away those mistakes by blocking shots. And Zvonimir Avicic almost had a triple-double earlier this season simply on blocks itself, right? That's just a trait that Illinois basketball really hasn't seen in the Brad Underwood era. Unless I'm missing somebody, please let me know in the chat. But Cameron Crocker obviously has made more of an effort to be aggressive when it comes to turnovers. Now, granted, the numbers haven't shown that exactly yet. We haven't forced as many turnovers as I think the plan is eventually at some point this season, but I think the plan is there, and we'll see as each game passes by how much they try to implement that. Now, before I wrap all this up, I do want to talk about something that does concern me. It's funny because it's simply one of those where we have an abundance of riches almost. And that's just talking about the Andrei Stojakovic dynamic, which I talked about a little bit earlier. I love the difference maker that he is because he has a skill set. He's an NBA forward essentially on this college basketball team. He's got the size and he plays like NBA forwards do, minus the 3-point shooting, which again, it's funny how things work out because his dad was one of the best shooters I've ever seen at the NBA level. Andres can also be an NBA player, but he's just a completely different type of player. And the only question I have is I've kind of hinted towards it, and I don't think this is something I'm super concerned with, but it's something I'm monitoring. And that's when this Illinois offense is playing at its peak powers. They continue to pass the ball around. They spread the floor. The ball is always moving until you find the right shot. And now, to no necessarily his fault of his own, Andrei Stojakovic just isn't that type of player. Andres is more of the mold of last year's Kasparis, a guy like Will Riley, even Terrence Shannon Jr., guys who are very talented basketball players, but in order to utilize their skill set the best, they need the ball in their hands. It's not one of those, you hold on to the ball for and make a decision within a half a second. Andres is, if you want to utilize Andres correctly, if you want to have those games where he scores 20 plus points, well, he's got to hold on to the ball. And in that case, sometimes the offense is just going to stop. I entertained the idea maybe a week or two ago about, is there a world where Jake Davis is the more suitable starter at the 3 spot for this offense to run ideally, and then you have Andrei Stojakovic and Mihailo Petrovic coming off the bench? I mean, Jake Davis's play over the last couple of games has pretty much cemented the talk that he's probably lost his starting job for the rest of the season, but I think it's just something to continue to monitor. Jake is one of those guys who doesn't need the ball, but if he's not making his 3-point shots, which he hasn't been the last couple of days, well then yeah, there's really nothing that he provides on the court that Andres is simply not better at, except holding on to that basketball. Now, clearly, the best lineup Illinois is going to have is with Andrei Stojakovic, a guy who could play in the NBA on the court together. But I do think if there's one facet of this team that Brad Underwood, Tyler Underwood, and that whole coaching staff, they're going to have to work on, is figuring out how you blend and you mesh the team concept and what's really working with the team and blend in what Andrei Stojakovic is so incredibly good at. As I mentioned when I kicked off this episode, Andres simply could be the best player on this team on certain game nights. And so how do you unleash that without taking away from the rest of the guys? Andres had his first start of the season last game, and that's when Illinois started off at its poorest. Is that a coincidence? It's something to monitor moving forward. And lastly, the thing that kind of has me concerned is just this injury bug. And I don't know what's going on with Illinois basketball lately and these injuries. We know Mihailo Petrovic was injured in the offseason. We know Andrei Stojakovic was injured in the offseason. Andrei Stojakovic has finally been able to come back and play on the basketball court. Petrovic looks like he's a game day decision. We know Tomislav Ivisic played in one game, then he was hurt for a while. He's missed the last few games. He's a game time decision against Alabama. And then in the last game, Zvonimir Ivisic had a noticeable limp. He only played, I think, 15, 16 minutes. I don't really have an extent to his injury right now. This team, they're fortunate that they're as deep as they are because the injury bug is testing them. And you hope that you're getting all your injuries out of the way now, because this non-conference schedule is nothing to mess around with. You're playing Alabama on Wednesday night. Then you're going to have UConn on Black Friday the week after. Then the week after that, you're playing Tennessee. Then we still have a game coming up against Missouri, who looks really good so far this year. And then I haven't even mentioned that when December comes rolling around, that's when the gauntlet, that is the Big Ten Conference schedule, starts up. You want to get your guys healthy for that portion. But, as a team, you have to be excited about what this team looks like right now. Currently ranked at number 8. I think that's about right. That's probably around where I'd put them. Again, I don't agree with the fact that Michigan was ranked one higher than Illinois, but It's hard to really get a feel for what these college basketball teams look like until they've played these tough games. And so I think it's fair to say Illinois looks like they're a top 10 basketball team in the country right now. A lot of things are going right for this basketball team. There's a couple things that I do have concerns about, but I think we'll be able to see how big of a concerns they really are, after we have those matchups against a team like Alabama or the game next week against UConn. When you see them go up, it's one thing beating teams like Colgate or Jackson State. You want to see more of what happens when you play teams like Texas Tech, which again, it was a victory on your end. And exactly what you needed to do. Take care of business at home. Can you do the same thing at the United Center on Wednesday? What looks good? What doesn't look good? I'll say it again. I was very optimistic about this basketball team coming into the season. And somehow I'm even more optimistic. I'm even more excited about what I've seen on the court through the first 4 games. There's a big matchup on Wednesday night against Alabama, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the chess match between Brad Underwood and Nate Oates, and just how this young team, this team that the roster, again, half the roster is brand new, how they continue to come together. Because what they're relying on is not necessarily their offensive talents, because that's natural. This group of guys are very talented offensive players. But I truly do believe that the reason this team looks so incredibly good right now is because, A, the roster that Brad Underwood has built is one of the deepest. I think it's the deepest roster that we've had in the Underwood era. And I can't believe I'm saying that because we've had some really good basketball teams in the past 10 or so years. But secondly, what this team is relying on is not something that we thought would be a strong suit on this basketball team. And for me, mainly rebounding. And rebounding in a lot of ways, it's not just something in the box score. It's a culture. It's a mindset. And if Illinois, from this point forward, ingrains that into the culture, then I think that this Brad Underwood era may be entering a new era of success we haven't seen in years past. Apologize for going a little long on that segment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push over to what the coaches said to tomorrow's episode as well as preview the Alabama game, which I know I keep mentioning because I think it's going to be a good barometer game, even more so than that Texas Tech game. I really like this Crimson Tide basketball team, and I really, really like their head coach. I think their head coach is one of the top 5 or 6 in the country. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where my expectations should be for this Illini men's basketball team. So I'll have that preview up. I did want to give a special shout out today to Pat Bryant, who had his best performance on Sunday. 5 catches for 82 yards, both highs for Pat on this very young season. It's impossible not to root for Pat at this point, and to see him slowly start to get success at the NFL level. That's something we're all looking forward to. Hope, obviously, I drafted him in my fantasy league, so I kind of wish this had happened earlier, but so be it. As long as he continues to beat Pat Bryant, the football player, I think he's got a bright future in the NFL. Also, Illinois football reported that their last game of the season against Northwestern is also going to be a primetime matchup. It's going to be at 6:30. That means the last 2 games of the season for Illinois football are going to be primetime matchups, both at 6:30 this upcoming week. They're going to be facing off against the Wisconsin Badgers. Myself and Locked On Badgers host Ryan Herrings will do a crossover episode sometime this week. It's a team that I'm telling you, I think Illinois opened up as 10-point favorites. Don't take them lightly. This team struggles to score, but they're playing for a lot right now. They understand that they've turned their season around, at least defensively, it seems. They look pretty impressive in that first half against Indiana. But, it's a game where Brett Bielema, there's a lot of talk about him coming back home to Madison. It's going to be a tough matchup, but one that we'll definitely cover here on Locked On Illini. All right, that's going to just about wrap it up for today. Thank you for making Locked On Illini your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big Ten. Craig Shimon breaks down the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, I'd love to hear from you. Please find me on your favorite social medias. You can find me at TheSunnyV or at Talk Illini, or send me an email, talkillini@gmail.com. I always love to hear your guys' feedbacks. If you guys have ideas and suggestions for maybe certain segments, or you just want to drop by and say hello. I always appreciate the communication I have with this community that continues to grow. That's going to wrap it up for today. Again, we're going to have a lot more basketball content. Big week in basketball, but we're also going to be covering football and everything in between. So if you're not already in the Talk Illini Discord, please, the link should be in the description. I'll talk to you there. Until the next time, ILL. Love you guys.